Have you ever stopped and thought about what happened to Jesus after he went to the cross, but before he resurrected? Most of us know of his crucifixion and resurrection, but what of these 3 mysterious days between? This part of his story is overlooked for the most part, but one of the most astounding truths in all of Scripture is hidden within. What if I told you that Jesus didn't merely rest in that tomb those 3 days? No, he went somewhere unspeakable. He descended into hell. Why did this spotless Son of God go to a place of torment and despair? Well, keep reading, because the answer might change everything you think about his sacrifice for good. To understand why Jesus had to go to hell, we need to go back to the core of his mission. Sin is not just a list of bad actions, but rather a state of separation from God. Every sin, no matter how small, creates a chasm between humanity and the divine, and the ultimate consequence of sin: eternal separation in a place the Bible describes as hell. But Jesus had a mission to bridge this chasm. He came not merely to teach or heal, but to pay the full price of all sins before God on behalf of all mankind. In doing so, he didn't simply die. He met sin's punishment in its entirety, fully experiencing all consequences of separation from God. Thus, his descent into hell was no punishment for his own sins. He was entirely sinless. It was part of the price he paid for us. When Jesus died, his spirit didn't immediately ascend into heaven. Instead, the Bible tells us he descended to the lower parts of the earth. In Jewish tradition, this place was called Sheol, a realm of the dead divided into 2 parts, one for the righteous, often referred to as Abraham's bosom, and another for the unrighteous, a place of torment. The righteous awaited the Messiah to lead them to God's presence, while the unrighteous faced the consequences of their rejection of God. Jesus' descent wasn't an act of defeat, it was a mission. He went to proclaim his victory over sin and death, and to liberate the righteous souls who had waited in hope for centuries. 1 Peter 3:19 says, "He went and proclaimed to the spirits in prison." Imagine the scene. Jesus, having endured the agony of the cross, now enters into the very heart of darkness. He causes the gates of hell to shake in their foundations as he declares that sin and death have been defeated. The powers of hell that once held humanity captive now face their conqueror. Jesus' declaration was not just a statement. It was an act of cosmic power. He was not there as a victim. He was there as a conqueror. His coming broke the hold of death and began the process of death's undoing. Ephesians 4:8 says, "When he ascended on high, he took many captives." This was no mere ascent. Now, Jesus led the souls of the righteous from Abraham's bosom into the presence of God, because now was the hope the world had been yearning for over the centuries. For them, it was a matter of days since the Messiah came. Jesus did not just declare, he acted. He released the captives and led them to a place from which they could finally behold God in person. So why did Jesus have to go to hell? It is because his mission was not to save us partially, but to save us totally. By going into hell, he experienced the full weight of sin, even that ultimate separation from God, so that we would never ever have to face it. His journey to the depths is a reminder that no matter how far we feel from God, he has already been there, and he's already made a way back. Revelation 1:18 says, "I am the living one. I was dead, and now look, I am alive forever and ever. And I have the keys of death and Hades." Those keys are our assurance that sin and death no longer have the final say. Here's the most important part. Jesus did this for you. His descent into hell wasn't just a historical event. It was a personal act of love for every person who has ever lived. No matter your past, your failures, or your doubts, Jesus' victory means that you're never too far gone. The question is, will you accept the gift he's offering? He's already paid the price, broken the chains, and made a way. All you have to do is trust him. Think of this for a moment. He didn't just bear the physical pain of the cross. He endured the spiritual agony of separation from God. On that cross, he cried out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" This was not a cry of just physical suffering. It was the cry of someone bearing the weight of every sin humanity has ever committed. Then he went down even into hell itself. Why? Because love for you is so great, so huge, that he was so ready to go down to the lowest possible place to bring about your salvation. This wasn't an expedition of circumstances for him. It was a grace act to us. Jesus, the sinless Lamb, voluntarily accepted the punishment which we should have been brought before God. If that does not awe you, consider this. He knew that many would still reject him. Yet his love did not wane. But this is not the ending of hell. Jesus did not go down to plunge into the depth. He went to conquer it. Imagine the moment of his resurrection. The tomb was empty, the stone was rolled away, and death itself was defeated. The risen Christ was not just proof of his divinity. It was the ultimate declaration that sin and death no longer have the last word. When Jesus rose, he did not just defeat death on his own behalf, but defeated it in our behalf as well. The resurrection was the shout of victory resounding through eternity that shouted, "It is finished." Every chain, every sin, and every power of darkness was broken, and the very same power that raised Jesus from the dead is now available to those who believe on him. What does it mean to you here and now? It means that however lost you feel today, Jesus already paid the price to make you come home. It means that the chains of sin and shame that weigh you down have already been broken. And it means that the fear of death and the unknown no longer holds power over you. Jesus didn't descend into hell just to claim victory for himself. He did it to share that victory with you. Revelation 1:18 says, "I am the living one. I was dead, and now look, I am alive forever and ever, and I hold the keys of death and Hades." Those keys are your assurance. They're the promise that nothing, not death, not sin, not even hell itself, can separate you from the love of God. But the truth is this: until you accept it, a gift is not yours. Jesus has already done his work. Now it's time for acceptance on your part. So what will you do with this truth? Jesus' journey to hell and back wasn't a historical event and had no less than personal intent to love you. He has defeated sin, death, and the grave. He has made a way for you to live in freedom and hope. All that's left is for you to step into that freedom. If you ever feel as though you are too far gone, too broken, or too unworthy, well, remember this: he went to the very lowest place and lifted you up. He saw worth in you when it could not be seen in you. Now he is calling on you to trust him. Will you take his hand? Will you step into the new life he's offering? And that concludes today's story. If you thought this was as fascinating as I did, please remember to subscribe to the channel for more thought-provoking stories like this one, like the video, and share it with someone you think should hear it. To ensure you don't miss any uploads, turn on the notification bell. Until next time, thanks for watching.